I took piano for 2 years when I was 6 and 7, and then I stopped and started playing guitar, and then when I got this role, I started to take lessons again from this really nice Juilliard teacher, and those lessons went really well. And Dallas Roberts, the man who plays Ned, got lessons from the same teacher, and within a month or so, I was playing piano all the time. What we're sort of aiming for is actually that they have mixed emotions, that some of them will feel sort of will be on Josh's side, and some of them will hate Joshua, and there'll be a mix, and people actually, that's why we didn't show Joshua killing anybody like in other movies, you know, like The Bad Seed or The Good Son, or things with like terrible kids. But in this, you don't know that he's really bad. I mean, all signs point to him, but you don't have cold, hard evidence that he's bad. So some people might think of Joshua as the hero, or they might think of him as like the bad guy in the movie.
In the beginning of the film, and even before the film starts, the history of Josh and Abby and Brad, I think, is fairly good. And I think that Josh is a bit eccentric. He's a strange kid, you know, a bit cerebral, maybe, not so emotional. But I think that Brad and Abby love him, and I think that he's probably very charming in a Dr. Spock kind of way, and you know, kind of. But when he was a baby, he did scream a lot. So I imagine he's pretty. We probably think that he's fairly repressed, and he's maybe got a temper, but he's fairly cerebral, and so. And, you know, I think we think he's an eccentric kid, but we don't know what's going on with him, you know. Brad's the kind of guy, his glass is always half full. He's always trying to, he's a problem solver. He's always trying to be the guy who's going to make everything okay. I think he's a leader. I think he's a charming guy. He didn't probably get great grades in school. But he's a good guy, you know. He's a good guy, but I think there's a side of him that's a little dark, and I think there's a side of Abby that's a bit dark too. And we start to see that she has a past, and she has a genetic past that haunts her. And I think Joshua, in a way, in his own weird way and diabolical way, outs us to be who we really are. George has done documentaries up until now, and he's a fast learner, man, because he really is incredibly well prepared, and he wrote the story, so he really knows the material, and he really gets these characters, you know, to the bone. You know, I mean, he really understands what's going on here, and so I refer to him constantly. He's the boss, you know, and he's also a very kind man. You know, he's a good guy, and so it's always good when you're working with somebody who's even-tempered and has social skills. You know, a lot of directors don't. You know, so that makes it a lot more pleasant.
I knew if I was going to take this, it was going to be an incredible challenge, because I was exhausted from working so much. I had just done a lot of inspired work, and I was just absolutely exhausted. And the last thing I wanted, spring was blossoming, you know, life was burgeoning, everything was giving birth, everything surrounding me was giving birth, and happily doing so. And the last thing I wanted to do is you know, gain 12 pounds, and I wanted to be frolicking in a bikini after a really hard winter, and I didn't know if I had it in me. But at the very same time, at the very time of filming, someone very, very, very close to me was going through a similar thing that Abby was going through, and it wasn't psychotic postpartum, but it was a psychosis, and it was a hormone-induced psychosis, which is very similar. It was a chemical brain imbalance and severe depression, and so Abby was very, very real to me, and her situation was very real, and I had to play it. It's funny how you draw certain scripts to you at a time. It was tough. This film was tough. To gain 12, to gain 12 pounds on me is a lot, and to put yourself out there in a way and not care about makeup or hair and really, but I'm not. If I had gone through postpartum and was watching a woman, who was a cosmeticized version of postpartum depression, it would piss me off. Sam Rockwell, he is an entirely different breed of actor. He really is. He is one of the most inventive and surprising partners I've ever had in a scene. He's the kind of actor that inspires you to be a better actor. All he is concerned with is finding the truth of the moment, and he'll do anything to achieve it. And it's a real. He encourages you to be bold, and it was a brilliant coupling, I think. He's an amazing kid. He's lived a million lives by the ripe old age of 10 or 11, whatever he is now. This kid's going to be president by the next election. He's so sharp, razor sharp. He's very smart, very articulate, very intuitive, he's a special kid, and I had a great time. It always is a great time. Some of the best scene partners are always children and animals. It's always the same because there's that unpredictability factor. You never know, and they're so open, and they just really react with which makes the scene alive. But he was wonderful to work with, and in rehearsals and out, he clings right away. He's a very open child, and so we became a family. We became a unit very quickly. What's great about George is immediately he allowed us to bring our own idiosyncrasies to it, our own sort of personal tumults. He really encouraged us to bring our stories to the roles and to take advantage of the natural chemistry that Sam and I had together. And he encouraged a lot of improvisation, and a lot of the rehearsal process was improvisation.
For one thing, I think there's comparisons to The Shining and Rosemary's Baby, and that baggage is there, at least to Rosemary's Baby, because this is very much a New York movie. But what I think is much scarier is the idea that it's really based in realism. I mean, there's a real naturalism to the movie, and those movies have this supernatural element. But I think it's much scarier if this movie could actually happen to you, and these very frightening things could happen to anyone. There's a real balance because, first of all, you don't hire actors like Sam Rockwell and Vera Farmiga if you're not going to let them try things and improv things. But there's also a real sort of line that the movie walks. It's so specific because the movie's actually quite funny, but it's more of a nervous laughter. And we were really interested in this sort of connection between laughter and anxiety, and I think there's a real connection between the two that's very interesting and actually heightens each other. And so yeah, there's a very specific and tight line that we had to walk with the humor, how far we let it go, and maintaining the tension, and how far we let the improvs go, and when to sort of let them try things, and when we had to really stick to the bottom line of what the movie was.
I think that Joshua starts off in a bad place. I think that there are circumstances within his life that facilitate him or enable him to go in a particular direction. But I think that he would have gone in a bad direction no matter what the circumstance. Although I think that he's somewhat of the master of his own fate, and that he, inasmuch as a 9-year-old is able to determine their fate, he is manipulating his world. We put Jacob into piano lessons when we first cast him. I think he played a little bit of piano, but certainly not very much, and he plays the guitar. He's actually in a band. He needed to learn how to play the sonata. And the piano teacher first said that He didn't think that his hands would be big enough to play the sonata. But I think he cracked it within the first 2 weeks. And now the piano teacher's insisting that he stays in piano lessons. Absolutely a challenge to try and make a film in New York City as an independent film. It's a fantastic place to make a city. You have access to incredible locations and incredible talent. But making of independent films is always a financial struggle. We've been lucky in this film that we've been able to attract great crew and great talent. And I think it's to the credit of the script and to the director that we've been able to do that. When we first met George Ratliff, we were obviously attracted to him because of the wonderful script that he'd written. And, you know, after getting to know George and understanding what kind of film influences he has and what kind of films he likes and what kind of actors he's drawn to, the picture started to emerge of what this project could be.
We're in Fort Totten. It's supposed to be the Upper East Side of Manhattan, but for the sake of ease and comfort, we've decided to use this location out in Queens and treat it like a giant backlot, and use this building behind me for the interior of the Upper East Side apartment. We had to modify the inside, reshape it so it lends itself towards a 15th floor apartment rather than a detached Victorian house, which is probably what you see behind me. We are in Fort Totten, playing it for the Upper East Side in Manhattan, and what you see behind me is a giant rig to hang a backdrop, which is a view of the Upper West Side of Manhattan. So when we're in the living room and we're looking through the windows, it'll look like looking through Central Park to the west side of town rather than Queens.